What is up, guys? Today we are going to be talking about the one thing that may be more important than your USDA agricultural zone, your average first and last frost date, and your local weather report. But first, I have to take you back in time to last night. Good morning, guys. It is 5:45 and I wanted to show you the temperature outside. This is what it currently says. It's at 38 degrees, feels like 34. It's very cold outside. Obviously I had to screenshot this, guys. I'm not gonna give you my location for security reasons. I'm not lying to you, I promise. But let's walk outside and look at the thermometer. Ooh. All right. Here's what that says. Good afternoon, guys. It is cold and windy, but we are going to go to the trusty barn to have a conversation about something. Today I wanted to talk to you guys about something more important than your USDA growing zone, more important than your local weather channel, more important than any other weather information you can get besides your own microclimate. So what is a USDA plant hardiness zone? For the USDA plant hardiness zone map is the standard by which gardeners and growers can determine which plants are most likely to thrive at a given location. The map is based on average annual winter temperature in 10-degree Fahrenheit differences. So in my USDA growing zone 8A, my average annual winter temperature minimum is 10 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit. That means on any given day in the winter months, I shouldn't expect to go lower than 10 degrees Fahrenheit. Now that being said, that is an average based on a very large swath of the United States, and that is subject to change if you get, you know, a particular cold spell, warm spell, etc., etc. Ooh, it's warm. Another really good average to know if you're a gardener is your annual frost-free days. So my first frost based on my area usually occurs November 1st-ish, and my last frost in the spring usually occurs April 1st-ish. That sets the number of frost-free growing days you have during the spring, summer, and fall region for annual crops that are not frost hardy. Now, these are averages again. Some years the frost may fall sooner or later, just depending on the weather patterns, but that is something to know and can be talked about in a later video. Now, both your USDA hardiness zone and your annual frost-free days are very, very important things to know as first-time gardeners and lifetime gardeners. You need to know these things, especially when you're planting perennials. Your hardiness zone really comes into effect, and then when you're planting annuals, your frost-free days really comes into effect. And one thing that the local temperature, the USDA hardiness zone map, and your average frost-free days have in common is they're all averages. And these are all very good things to know, and you should. But when you are growing a vegetable garden, there is something really, really important that a lot of people don't pay attention to, and that is your microclimate. Now, it is really, really easy for me to get on Google, get just on the front page of my phone, on the radio, anything to get the average temperature in my area right now. Any day, any minute, any hour. But is that really an accurate representation of what's going on my property in my particular neck of the woods? Now, the reason I'm talking to you guys about microclimates on a random November day is because the same thing that happened in my garden last winter is happening this year. And I wanted to warn you guys against the mistakes that I made so that hopefully you won't have the same heartache as I did last year. And this year we're doing good. So the wind is coming from the west as per usual. And I think if I keep you guys down here in the garden bed, then I can speak to you outside. Dogs are up to something. So the first mistake that I made last winter was relying on my local weather channel to give me an accurate report of what my weather was going to be like. Now, to give myself some grace, I did not know then what I know now, as goes the passing of time. But that is why I'm here to tell you guys. Microclimates matter. So what is a microclimate? A microclimate is the distinctive climate of a small-scale area, such as a garden, park, valley, or part of a city. The weather variables in a microclimate, such as temperature, rainfall, wind, or humidity, may be subtly different from the conditions prevailing over the area as a whole. So I live in a river valley. Cold air sinks and hot air rises. So, living in the bottom of a valley, you actually get colder air than you would living at a higher altitude, contrary to popular belief. Not in all cases, but in this case, yes. So the cold air from this westward hill that we have over here falls down every night and sinks into this valley, making this valley colder than the rest of the area. Now, where our local weather gets its weather report from is a small airport at the top of this west-facing hill. Now, as a broad overview, yes, I'm in a valley, but a lot of other small things affect microclimate, such as the amount of sun that your property gets, the soil type that your property has, the amount of precipitation that your property gets. A lot of things, and basic geography dictates your microclimate. I'm not going to go into the specifics because I don't know them, but that being the basis for all of this, my property is usually what I've managed to map out over the last year is that my property is usually about 10 degrees cooler in the winter than what my local forecast says. And that first mistake of relying on the local weather channel to determine the temperatures in my garden cost me my garden plants. So you guys have been through several garden tours and seen how large my cauliflower, broccoli plants are in these raised beds. And unfortunately, I don't have pictures of what they looked like last year, but I can basically tell you that that single raised bed had 3 cauliflower plants that looked like that the entire winter. Obviously, my success was far greater this year, but let me tell you why. Last winter, I relied on how cold my growing zone said I would get. I relied on my extension office to tell me when my first frost would be. And I relied on the weather channel to tell me how cold it was really getting at night. And I just could not figure out why I couldn't grow anything. But then I got a thermometer as a gift, an outdoor thermometer from Chase. Oh shoot, when was it? I think it was for Christmas. I'm trying to block the wind with my hand. I guess we'll find out if it's working or not. Once I put the thermometer out here in the garden, and he bought me a dual thermometer. So it had the interior house temperature and then 2 remote thermometers. And I put one on the front porch and one in the garden on a log. Once I had those 2 temperatures and I was monitoring them every night, they were so different from what the local weather channel was putting out. I remember at one point, I think one night, there was an 11-degree difference between what they said. And they had said it was going to be above freezing. And I was like way below freezing, which can mean a lot in a garden because some plants can tolerate a slight frost and not a hard freeze. And I'm telling you guys all this right now because I'm about to show you all of my frost tolerant plants and how my weather has been affecting them. So for the last few days, the Weather Service has predicted lows no lower than 29 degrees. In fact, the Weather Channel hasn't forecasted below 28 degrees this entire fall season so far. And all of these plants in my garden are frost and freeze hardy, meaning they can handle temperatures below 28 degrees. All that to tell you, it has definitely been lower than 28 degrees this past week. This area of the garden is particularly sad. These are all rutabagas. The house is actually built on a hill, And of all of the flat land on our property, this is literally the lowest point that I could have picked to plant a garden. But c'est la vie, it's done. If you've ever planted rutabaga before, you know it's a pretty cold, hardy vegetable. And just look at this. My goodness. Now, the root will still be good. It's still a harvestable vegetable. But a couple degrees of difference, especially between frost and freezing, can absolutely make a difference on the life of your plant, the growth of your plant, the health of your plant, all of the above. And I don't say this to try and worry people or scare any first-time gardeners, especially if you don't even know what a growing zone is. Goodness, don't listen to me. Like, I don't want to scare you away from growing, but I think it's very important because of the second mistake I made last year. After I quit my job last winter, although it was very, very good for me and I don't regret any second of it, I was a little bit lost for a while, and I threw myself into the homesteading, gardening, providing, you know, food and a way of life for the family. I took it like straight to my soul because I needed something to focus on. And when I had such a huge failure in the winter garden, I really took it personally. I took it as a failure of myself. Like, I was inadequate as a human being. Like, you just left your job and now you can't even grow a piece of broccoli to put on the dinner table. You know what I mean? Which is terrible. That is so terrible, to think to yourself like that, or to beat yourself up for that. And it had nothing to do with my ability to grow food. I mean, my garden has a crap ton of food in it, and it's all good, healthy, amazing food. I just didn't know enough about the property at the time, or about gardening, or microclimates, or the fact that the local weather channel could be wrong. And that's okay. It doesn't mean I'm a bad gardener, it just means I didn't have any broccoli last year. This video is not about making you go get a thermometer to put in your garden and watch 24 hours a day. Although I do want to put ammo in your toolbox, and you should have all of the knowledge available to you in your tool belt to use and make your garden the most successful garden it can be. But I mostly make this video to let you know that you're not a bad gardener, and sometimes you just don't know things, or you're just out of your control. But mostly I make this video so that you don't make the same mistake I did and beat yourself up for an entire holiday season because you blamed yourself for something that was completely out of your control. Now, obviously, my garden is not covered right now. And I know how cold it's getting. It's getting in the low 20s and is absolutely affecting those plants. And that's something that I will go into in another video. So I can't really say that knowing it was getting down to the low 20s would have made a difference in me actually trying to help my garden continue on. But it absolutely would have made a difference in my mental health. So without the goal of making you go out and spend more money or instilling fear in you, a few tips I can recommend is just get on Google, figure out what a microclimate is, what affects it, and then take a good hard look at your property. You know, figure out what kind of soil you have, where the sun hits your property, where the warmest parts of your property are. For example, the warmest part of my property is the south-facing wall of that house. I know that because I have fried a million plants in the landscaping on that side of the house, thinking that they would be okay. But with the radiant solar heat and light from that white wall, they're toast, man. If you can afford a thermometer, put it out in your garden and start monitoring the temperature compared to your local weather channel. Not that it would help you if you have your own thermometer anyways, but maybe if the thermometer ever broke, you could roughly guesstimate what the temperature is going to be in your garden that day. But you know, a couple degrees of cold can make the difference between a plant living or dying. I know that if I covered my raised beds with frost fabric or plastic during the day, they would absolutely look better than they do right now. I mean, they're still great, they're still alive. but they would look better just because it would be that couple degree difference between 20 degrees and 30 degrees. But that's something just a little quick I wanted to give you guys today. I thought about it this morning when I came out to my very sad looking frozen garden for the 7th day in a row, that I should probably talk to someone about this so that they don't make the same mistakes I did last year. But thank you all for joining me today. As usual, see you on the next one.